What happens when one of Hollywood's most revered actresses collides with one of daytime TV's most unfiltered voices? The answer, a confrontation so explosive, it ended with security escorting an Oscar-winning legend off the set of The View. This wasn't just another promo gone wrong. It was a live, unscripted collision between artistic legacy and political firebrand, and it shocked even the show's most seasoned viewers. It started like any other episode. Meryl Streep was on set to promote her new film, a powerful biopic about a pioneering female scientist who shattered barriers in the 1950s. Hair, makeup, lighting, everything was immaculate. The studio buzzed as Whoopi Goldberg introduced their guest with a reverence reserved for icons. The opening questions were expectedly gentle. Working with the director, portraying a historical figure, capturing the emotional core of the role. But Joy Behar wasn't here for a puff piece. As the topic shifted naturally to the film's themes of feminism and systemic discrimination, Behar went for the jugular. "Meryl," she began, "this woman you're portraying fought against institutional sexism. Isn't it hypocritical for someone with your platform to remain silent while women's rights are being rolled back in real time?" The studio went still. Streep's signature poise held, barely. "My role as an actress," she replied calmly, "is to bring truth to the screen. I don't believe my political opinions need to hijack every public appearance." But Behar wasn't letting go. "With your reach, your influence, silence is complicity. You've been awarded, adored, celebrated. But where are you when real women need defenders?" The temperature dropped. Streep's smile faded. "Joy, you're assuming I do nothing. That's not just unfair. It's uninformed. Not everything I do is broadcast for applause." The tension escalated. Behar pushed harder, accusing Streep of hiding behind artistic purity while dodging real-world responsibility. "You've won 3 Oscars, Meryl. That's not just a crown. It's a responsibility. And staying silent is a choice. A privileged one." Streep's voice sharpened. "I've used my craft to challenge norms, to reflect society, to provoke thought." "That's not nothing. That's not enough," Behar snapped. "Pretending to be brave on screen isn't bravery. It's performance. We need voices, not costumes." The set was tense. Whoopi tried to steer things back to safer ground. Sonny Hostin gestured toward the teleprompter. Sarah Haynes cracked a joke. It died instantly. But it was too late. "You call me a relic," Streep said, rising from her chair, her voice suddenly icy. "I've built a career exploring the struggles of women. Complex, layered, real women. And I've done it with integrity. If that's outdated to you, that says more about you than me." Behar stood too. "You're from a time when celebrities could be apolitical and still be applauded. That time is gone. The world's on fire, and neutrality is cowardice." Alyssa Farah Griffin called for a commercial break, but no one moved. This wasn't about airtime anymore. It was about ideology. Streep defended the power of storytelling. Behar demanded political commitment. Art versus activism. Subtlety versus direct action. Legacy versus urgency. "You want to know what I've done?" Streep challenged, her voice rising. "I've given voice to the voiceless. I've resurrected forgotten lives. I've helped people see what they refuse to face." "And what's changed?" Behar shot back. "They go home, they feel inspired, then they wake up to the same broken system. Feeling isn't fixing. It was raw. It was real. And it ended with Meryl Streep walking off the set, escorted, but not silenced. The footage went viral within hours. But what lingered wasn't just the argument. It was the deeper question beneath it. What do we expect from our artists in times of crisis, and who gets to decide what real change looks like? "Ladies, I think we're getting a little off track here." Whoopi interjected gently. "Meryl, why don't you tell us about working with the director on this project?" But Streep didn't bite. The attack on her legacy had gone too far. She looked directly at Behar, her expression cool and composed, but her voice carried weight. "Joy, you seem to believe That if someone isn't broadcasting their convictions from every platform, they're not making a difference. But real change often happens quietly, through the stories we tell, the empathy we cultivate, the reflection we provoke. Behar wasn't having it. That's a convenient excuse for inaction, she snapped. You're one of the most recognizable faces in the country. When you stay silent on issues that matter, you're not being thoughtful. You're choosing comfort over courage. The implication was clear. Streep's legendary restraint, celebrated for decades in Hollywood, finally cracked. Her tone dropped an octave. How dare you question my courage, she said slowly. I've taken risks. I've played controversial figures. I've exposed difficult truths and tackled subjects most actors wouldn't touch. And I've done it all without sacrificing my artistic integrity for applause or profit. Artistic integrity, Behar repeated, her voice laced with derision. You call it integrity when you refuse to take a stand while women's rights are being shredded, while people are marching in the streets and you're worried about our craft. The studio was silent. The tension was electric. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably. Sonny Hostin's expression tightened, calculating whether stepping in would escalate things or make them worse. Streep stood, closing the distance toward Behar's side of the table. Her presence was steady, but there was steel behind her eyes. You think activism only counts if it's loud. You confuse confrontation for progress and outrage for impact. But not all change comes from yelling on camera. And you think you're above the mess? Behar fired back, rising too. You float in this bubble of prestige, of legacy, and still want to act like you're relevant to the real world. But silence is a side. Neutrality in the face of injustice is complicity. Phones came out. The audience sensed it. This was history unfolding. Not an interview gone wrong, but a philosophical collision neither woman would walk away from unscathed. The crew didn't know whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling. I never claimed to be neutral, Streep replied, her voice low and even. I claim to be deliberate. I claim to believe in the power of storytelling to change hearts and minds in ways no speech ever could. But clearly, that's not good enough for someone who equates influence with trending topics. The shot at Behar's media career landed, her face flushed with fury. At least I'm not hiding behind some illusion of art, while the world burns, she hissed. At least I show up to fight. And what has all that fighting I actually accomplished? Streep countered, her voice now sharp, precise. What laws have changed? What injustice has ended because of your monologues? Or are you just adding more noise to a very crowded room? Behar recoiled like she'd been slapped. Her identity, built on outspokenness, confrontation, advocacy, was being dismantled, piece by piece, by someone questioning the very premise of her influence. I've informed people. I've challenged power. I've given a platform to voices who wouldn't have had one. You've created headliness. Streep cut in. You've commodified outrage. You've turned pain into segments and politics into punchlines. And now you want to do the same to me. It was devastating. Behar's eyes narrowed. You think your accolades make you better than the rest of us. You think because you've been honored and applauded. You don't have to get your hands dirty. And you think yelling from a desk on daytime TV makes you a revolutionary. Streep snapped back. You mistake commentary for courage. I don't pretend my work saves the world. I know its place. But at least I don't pretend my opinions are policy. The line hit like a hammer. Now both women stood face to face, neither blinking, neither backing down. What had started as a film interview had morphed into a raw, unsparing dismantling of each other's worldview. The audience could feel it. This wasn't just drama. This was a complete breakdown of professional decorum, the moment where dialogue became rupture. Whoopi tried one last time. All right, ladies, she said, her voice steady but strained. Let's take a breath. Let's take a break. But everyone knew. Something had already broken. Ladies, I think we need to take a step back, Whoopi urged, her voice calm but firm. This is getting too personal. No, Whoopi. Behar cut in, her eyes locked on Streep, her tone unwavering. I want to know why someone with her platform thinks she's too important to fight for what's right. I want to know why she thinks art matters more than action. A Streep didn't flinch. Her voice was steady, laced with gravitas. Because art endures, she said. Because stories have the power to echo long after protests fade. Because shifting how people think can be more transformative than changing how they vote. That was the breaking point. The rift between them was no longer personal, it was ideological. Behar believed in immediate, visible resistance. Streep believed in lasting, cultural change. Neither would yield. You want to talk about what endures? Behar sneered. Let's talk about oppression. That endures. Injustice endures when powerful people stay silent. Your legacy, your awards, your carefully crafted performances. None of it will matter if we don't have a democracy left to admire it. A Streep's eyes narrowed. Joy, she said. Voice cool but cutting. You're so wrapped up in performing outrage, you've forgotten how to listen. You've weaponized conversation. You can't even talk to someone about their work without turning it into a purity test. My cause is justice, Behar fired back. My cause is basic human dignity. My cause is making sure people like you don't get to retreat to your mansions and pat yourselves on the back, while the rest of us are out here fighting. That landed hard. The accusation of class detachment wasn't just personal. It was an indictment of Streep's entire approach to her career. You think attacking my success makes your point more righteous? Streep asked sharply. You think because I've been fortunate, I'm out of touch. I've earned everything through decades of work. That doesn't make my voice less valid. Behar didn't hesitate. I think your success has made you comfortable. I think you've forgotten what it means to struggle. Not in theory, but in the real world. You don't need change. You just talk about it from a distance. What the audience was witnessing now was unprecedented. Not a debate, but a collapse. A dismantling of the usual celebrity talk show dynamic. The masks were gone. The civility was gone. All that remained was raw, irreconcilable difference. You want to talk about struggle, Streep said, her voice tight with emotion. I've spent my whole career fighting to be taken seriously. I've battled sexism, ageism, the industry's obsession with youth and beauty. I've fought for stories that matter. But apparently, unless I shout it from the rooftops, it doesn't count. Behar's response was ice cold. That's right. Your career struggles don't compare to what women are facing right now. Losing reproductive rights. Facing real, daily oppression. Your industry problems don't hold a candle to that. That was the blow that truly landed. Streep's years of quiet advocacy, her deliberate choice to embed meaning in the roles she played. All of it was being dismissed as irrelevant. You know what, Joy, she said, her voice now low, almost shaking. I came here to talk about a woman who changed the world through sciency. She didn't need to march in protests or give speeches. She just did the work, and she changed history. Behar didn't back down. And what did it get her? She said bitterly. Obscurity. No one remembers her name. No one tells her story. That's what happens when you believe your work will speak for itself. It doesn't. It vanishes. The implication was brutal. That excellence without activism was meaningless. That without public advocacy, even brilliance disappears. For Streep, who had built her entire legacy on the idea that art could change the world, it was a dismissal not just of a character, but of herself. This was more than a disagreement. It was an attack on everything Meryl Streep believed in. That's exactly why I made this film, Streep said, rising from her chair with quiet resolve. To make sure her story isn't forgotten. To prove that you don't need a microphone or a podium to change the world. And that's exactly why nothing ever changes. Behar shot back, standing now as well. Because people like you think making a movie is the same as making a difference. You think storytelling is activism. The two women stood, locked in a standoff across the interview table. What began as a routine segment had now become something uncontainable. The other hosts had long stopped trying to intervene. They knew this had passed the point of no return. "I think," Streep said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of artistic credibility, "you've confused passion with effectiveness. You've confused noise with impact. And you've confused your TV platform with real power." "And you," Behar replied, unflinching, "have confused privilege with principle. You've confused comfort with courage, and you've mistaken artistic pretension for meaningful contribution." The studio was silent. Neither woman could back down, not without sacrificing their principles and pride. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a challenge to their identities, their careers, their legacies. Then something remarkable happened. Meryl Streep began removing her microphone. Her movements were slow, intentional, final. "I don't need to sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks controversy is the same thing as conviction," she said. "And I don't need to pretend celebrity worship is more important than actual issues." Behar snapped, her voice rising in tandem with Streep's departure. The audience was frozen, unsure whether to cheer, cry, or simply watch. America's most celebrated actress was walking off the set of one of television's most watched shows. Not out of anger, but with dignity sharpened by defiance. "Please, Meryl," Whoopi pleaded. "Let's take a breath. We can work this out." But Streep was already making her way to the edge of the set. Calm, steady. "Some things," she said without turning back, "can't be worked out. Some differences are irreconcilable." She paused just before the studio exit, turned once more toward Behar, and delivered one final parting shot. "Joy, I hope someday you learn the difference between making noise and making change. Until then, I'll keep doing what I do best, telling stories that matter." Behar didn't blink. "And I'll keep doing what I do best," she replied sharply, her voice echoing as Streep vanished from view. "Holding people accountable, even when they don't want to hear it." Security personnel began discreetly moving into place, not because there was a threat, but because there was no way to return this to a normal interview. What had unfolded was unscripted, unforgettable, and utterly beyond the usual boundaries of daytime television. Streep's exit wasn't a meltdown. It was an exodus, a line in the sand drawn with the full force of a storied career. Behind her, the studio was left in a stunned hush. The remaining hosts sat motionless, processing what had just occurred. Joy Behar remained standing, still defiant, but with an unmistakable flicker of unease. She may have won the argument by outlasting her opponent, but the cost was quickly becoming apparent. In the audience, people murmured. Some applauded Behar's courage, others were visibly shaken, sympathetic to Streep's stance. The crowd was split. Just like the country watching at home, what had started as a light promotional segment had erupted into a cultural earthquake. A clash of values, of power, of legacy. It would be debated for weeks, replayed, reanalyzed, pulled apart by commentators on every side of the political and cultural spectrum, not because it was sensational, but because it laid bare the raw, irreconcilable tension at the heart of modern celebrity activism. Two women, two platforms, two radically different ideas of what it means to matter. So what do you think? Was Joy Behar right to confront Meryl Streep for choosing subtlety over activism? Or did she cross a line, attacking an artist who chose to change the world not through protests, but through powerful, enduring stories? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about when celebrity interviews spiral into something much more than entertainment.